So today we're going to do a season preview for the Columbus Crew, who no doubt want to have a bounce back year this season after last year it was kind of a hangover year from them. I mean, after winning the 2020 MLS Cup, there was no doubt that there was a lot of expectation that was handed to them last season, and not only the fact that they did not meet that expectation, but yeah, I mean, injury crisis and also the fact that the defense basically decided to ship off goals for fun and make so many mistakes in games that cost them was kind of the reason why they had a record of only 13-8-13 and only finished with 47 points. I actually forgot to put how many goals that they score and concede, so I can just take a look here very quickly. I mean, the goals allowed, I think it's going to be relatively high because their defense last season was pretty bad. Actually, no. I now look at the goals allowed, and they only allow 45 goals, which is kind of a bit surprising because I thought last year their defense was really bad. Although I will say that in terms of some of the goals that they allow, it kind of came in some key situation where it basically cost them either getting all 3 points or even getting 1 point in a game. But they also scored 46 goals with a goal differential of +1. And as I mentioned, they finished ninth in the Eastern Conference. Now, when you look at the last 5 seasons for the Columbus Crew, as I mentioned last year, they become one of the few MLS teams to win MLS Cup and then miss the playoffs the very next season by finishing in 9th place. In the previous year, they won MLS Cup that year by finishing 3rd in the standings. Then in 2019, they also had a disappointing year, finishing in 10th place, followed by in 2018 they finished 5th place, and then in 2017 they finished in 5th place. So the last 4 years it's been kind of up and down. If you support for this team with the fact that there could be 1 year where they could be great and they can even win the title, and then the very next year expect there's going to be a bit of a downward trend, which if we follow that trend, this year's supposed to be a year where the Crew is able to bounce back and of course are able to make the playoffs and make some noise. Now, in terms of transfer that they made this offseason, so they definitely did address the defense a little bit and also a little bit on the attack too. They start off by bringing in Yayu from Wisla Krakow as well, their first signing, and he's going to be definitely a good piece, especially for them on the wing area. But the first defensive reinforcement they got is Milos Dejenik from Red Star. I expect he should be a regular starter in that center back position for this Crew team. Then they got some experience from Junel Anababa from Nashville SC. Good depth piece for that back line too. And then besides that, in terms of the Super Draft, they actually got Brady Scott, which I thought Brady Scott was actually part of Austin FC. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that when I look on the website to look at these ins and outs from each of the team, which by the way I actually look at the transfer market website. They said Brady Scott was coming from the Super Draft, even though I'm pretty sure he came from Austin FC and he basically was picked up off of free agency. But nevertheless, it still label him coming from the draft. But other player that they got in the draft is Jacob Aronson, Philip Quinton, and Patrick Shurte from the Super Draft. Now, players that is no longer with this team. We start off with Abubakar Keita going to the Colorado Rapids, Sebastian Berhalter going to the Vancouver Whitecaps, and then we get some big names from this team that is going somewhere else, either in MLS or overseas in Europe, or even in some case in Central America. You got Milton Valenzuela. He is now going to be going to FC Lugano. I think they sold him off for about $2.2 million. They also let go of Vito Vormgård, who's going to be going to Norway to join IK Start. Waylon Francis going to Central America, joining Costa Rican side Heredino. Harrison Alfo going to the expansion team Charlotte FC after Charlotte, of course, kind of bought him from the Columbus Crew. Then you got Eric Dick going to Minnesota, Graham Liller going to Loudoun United, Sat Abdul Salam, BWP, and yeah, both of these guys are free agent. I'm kind of surprised that BWP is still on the free agency market, because I'm assuming someone would be able to pick up a guy that, I know BWP is definitely up getting up to that age, and I'm kind of also surprised that, as the season goes on, I was expecting maybe he would eventually announce his retirement, but no, he's still on the free agency market. And again, I even though his age is starting to catch up to him, he still can be a guy that could be a reliable goal scorer, and that I won't be surprised as the season goes along when the team desperately needed a number 9. Looking at you, Sporting in KC, I won't be surprised someone will of course pick him up from the free agency market. And then of course you got Liam Fraser, who was coming here to the Crew on loan. He is actually going to be going back to Toronto FC after the Crew decided to not sign him on a permanent deal. Now, in terms of optimism for the Columbus Crew, well, they're going to get some of their star player back from injury. So with the incredible injury crisis that they gone through last season, the good news is at least they're going to get some of those player back. Now, they're not going to get a lot of these player back right away, but they're going to be getting some. And I think one player that I know that they're going to get back soon is going to be Aiden Morris, because I think Aiden Morris, didn't he suffer that torn ACL back in like March doing that CCL run? So yeah, I think he should be able to be back with this team soon, and the same goes with Artur and even Kevin Molino. But yeah, these are some of the star players that they desperately missed last season, that they're going to be very happy that they're going to be back in this team. And it's also kind of almost like a new signing too. Like anytime when you get a player that was out for the majority of last season, especially a player that you desperately need, it's like a new signing, even though technically he has been with your team all this time. It's just that he, of course, didn't play the whole last season because of suffering a season-ending injury. And then the other optimism that Crew fans will say about this team is you would expect the hangover effect from these players is now completely gone, and that they should be solely focused. I mean, I know obviously the hangover effect should not be an excuse to say, unless of course you talk to Caleb Porter, which I'm assuming he's going to use that as an excuse. But yeah, the hangover effect, of course, it should be gone with these players, and that I think these players should be a little bit more motivated, and that there maybe even is a little bit more pressure this season. I mean, last season, I've seen this many times whenever a team win MLS Cup, the pressure, of course, is off because you finally reached the top of the MLS mountain. But, the very next season, you kind of had that pressure off, and then things kind of go for a little bit of a downward spiral before, that's when there's always this kind of honeymoon period with fans. Kind of, they don't mind the team kind of suck because they won MLS Cup the previous year, but eventually that honeymoon period is going to be over, and it just seems like maybe that's going to be the case for this team, where even kind of the hangover effect, not just with the players but also with the fans, kind of still celebrating the 2020 MLS Cup win. Yeah, that's probably going to be gone for this upcoming season. There is actually going to be pressure and expectation that this team should be competing for playoffs, and also be maybe even an MLS Cup contender heading out of the Eastern Conference. Now, some concern for this Columbus Crew team. So I talked about how, they did kind of get some defensive reinforcements to fix up their back line, and some of those players that was part of the team that produced a very, very bad defensive team, or a very bad backline is now no longer with this team. Well, there is that concern whether or not if these new players can just insert in, and will they, of course, be much better, because again, it's something that I think the Crew was really looking into this offseason to try to fix that issue, because again, besides the injury concern, the defense was probably the biggest liability on this team, and probably the reason why they didn't make it to the playoffs. Like, if you minus some of those defensive mistakes that they made last season, or even maybe minus a couple of those, this team would have made it to the playoffs last season. So yeah, it was pretty clear that the priority of fixing that back line was on near the top of the list for this front office, and again, bring some new players in. Sometimes, of course, it will work out, sometimes it doesn't. We of course will see whether or not if that's the case. No depth in the fullback position. So, letting go both of their fullbacks in Milton Valenzuela and Harrison Awful is going to be tough for this crew team. But obviously, with Harrison Affo knowing the fact that he was getting up to age, I think it's the best for them to sell him off and turn it in a profit instead of maybe realizing he's starting to fall off the cliff and then kind of have to let him go off of a free transfer. But also with Milton Valenzuela, I was expecting maybe they're going to try to re-sign him, but instead it seems like he wants to be to test himself to Europe and go to FC Lugano. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how now they're going to bring in some of the player that was supposed to be kind of depth pieces for that fullback position, but now they're going to be accelerated into starting role. And one thing I know about depth with this Columbus Crew team, I think this is also kind of thing that I would throw in as a concern, but I think Crew fans already knew this from last season, is that they're not as deep as you thought they were. Like, on paper, they are, of course, deep when you look at the roster that they have, and they at least have a replacement in most of the position. But the problem is those replacements have not really stepped up last season, or at least produce it in a way that at least it doesn't produce too much drop off in terms of quality of this team. So that's kind of one thing that is going to be a bit concerned. And now, especially in the fullback position, where you have these guys that they're okay depth pieces and good utility pieces for this team, but are they going to be like starting caliber kind of player in MLS? Yeah, that's probably not going to be the case. So that's going to be one position that maybe they might think about fixing as the season goes along, or maybe even in the summer transfer window. And then the last thing to be concerned about this team is the inconsistency of their star player Lucas Zarian. So as crazy as this might sound, but I really think Lucas Zarian had a down year last season. I mean, when you look at the stats, yes, you probably would use that to say that's completely baloney, and the fact that his stats number is almost the same, if not better, than when he came into the league back in 2020. But the reason why I said that he kind of had a down year was because he was very inconsistent, and in some way he was kind of a very boom or bust kind of player last season for the Columbus Crew, where there's times where he can score those amazing free kick goals and provide a moment of magic out of this Crew team, and then there are times where he become kind of selfish on the ball, or even worse, sometimes just give the ball away in a very bad position. And sometimes that actually happened in the same game too. Like, that's just something you cannot have in your star player. And I truly believe that Lucas Zarian is still considered one of the top 5, number 10 in this league. But if he wants to get into the level with the likes of Carlos Vela, Sebastian Blanco, or even Nico Ladero, he's got to cut out those mistakes that he made last season. And that he also kind of in some way reminds me a little bit of Reynoso. I mean, I know in comparison between Reynoso and Zarian, it's obviously not a comparison. Zarian I still think is better than Reynoso, because at least with Zarian, not only he can provide the assist, but he can also score some big goals. And with Reynoso, that's always been one thing that I still get a little bit frustrated with him. I mean, I know he can of course run the show, Reynoso, but he just cannot score those big goals that, if he can do that, then yeah, he would definitely be right up there in the level of Ladero and Blanco. But the reason why I use that kind of comparison between Reynoso and Zarian is both of these guys are also kind of inconsistent. I mean, Reynoso last season, he was also very inconsistent. There's sometimes he can provide some magic, and then there are some times where he just looked very frustrated and just give the ball away. So, hopefully, Zarian will not follow that same path, and that he can, of course, fix up those mistakes. But yeah, that's kind of the only other concern I would say the Crew fans might have with this team. Though MVP of this team, I mean, speaking of Lucas Zarian, it's pretty obvious that it's him, because he's the star man. He's the guy that is running the show for this team, and I don't really need to explain too much. Now, in terms of comeback player, there are definitely a couple of players I could have gone, especially a couple of players that has suffered season-ending injury that I think could have a good comeback year. But I'm gonna go with Aiden Morris, who last season, it has to be very heartbreaking that he of course suffered that that was it a torn ACL or a broken leg that he suffered. Either way, it was a knee injury that basically ended his season, and that, you know, we saw what he did in the 2020 MLS Cup, where he really surprised everybody with the way that this is just like a 19-year-old kid playing in a title game, and you usually expect when you have young player playing in the biggest game of their career, there's going to be a lot of nerves. Nope, he just played like it was just another day at the park, and a player that seems like he's been there before too. And that's kind of when the moment I realized that, yeah, this kid definitely has some talent, and he kind of also showed it a little bit in his short time last season before he went down with a knee injury. So there's no doubt that I think now coming back from that knee injury, he is of course going to try to replicate that. I mean, it's always hard to try to do it when you come back from a season-ending injury, but the difference is that he's still a relatively young player, and you know, I know for a fact that when you're a young player and you suffer from a knee injury, it's much easier to come back compared to if you're more like an older or veteran player that is in 30s. So I don't think Aiden Morris is going to lose a step. I think he's going to come back strong and really help this team. Honorable mention, I will say, would also be with Artur, though. I think the reason why I maybe didn't pick Artur is because Artur has been so injury prone from this Columbus Crew team, and I won't be surprised he's going to suffer another injury that's going to keep him out for a bit. And I might even throw in Kevin Molino there too, but Kevin Molino, another player that's also very injury prone for this team. And yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of also the reason why I didn't pick both of those players. Now, in terms of expectation for this Columbus Crew team, make the playoffs. I mean, that's kind of the bare minimum for this team after such a disappointing year that they had last season. But I think the more important expectation that they want to meet is avoid another injury crisis. Like, again, you know, the injury crisis last season. I mean, I don't want to use injuries as a way to kind of make an excuse for a team to not perform well, and I'm pretty sure a lot of head coaches don't want to use that excuse. I mean, unless you're Caleb Laporter, he probably will definitely use that excuse as the reason why this team is not performing well. But yeah, I mean, last year that those injuries that they suffer, and then the amount of players that was on the IR list, which at one point was like the longest list out of any team in MLS. It's brutal. Like, any good teams will suffer because of that. But you know, hopefully they will avoid that heading into this season. But you know, it's not a guarantee because injuries does happen. And the other thing that I also think will happen this season, and I don't know if I said this before, but if I did, I'm going to repeat myself again, and that of course is the COVID outbreak. I mean, you know, let's just hope that they don't become a victim of that for this upcoming season. And I've also say the same thing pretty much for all 28 MLS team too. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and if you're a Crew fan, what's your optimism, your concern, and your expectation for this upcoming season. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.